Let's dive into a fictional narrative that's really got people talking. It's a geopolitical thriller called Mahasamar, and its whole premise is, well, it's pretty chilling. It argues that the biggest wars of our time aren't being fought on any battlefield you can see. Right from the get-go, the author hits you with this idea. The book's argument is simple but powerful. We are all living through a silent, invisible conflict, and it's happening right now, whether we know it or not.
So, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the core concepts from this novel. We'll look at what it means by an invisible war, who the supposed players are, and the kind of strategies it imagines, all taken straight from the book itself.
Okay, so the first big idea the book throws at us is this concept of a digital Mahasamar, a great digital war. The core argument is that conflict itself has completely changed. The battlefield isn't land or sea anymore, no. The new battlefield is right between your ears. It's our minds, our perceptions, our collective reality. Think about it. In the past, you projected power with cannons and armies, right? Stuff you could see and touch. But in the world of this novel, the most powerful weapon might be just a single line of code that tanks a stock market, or a viral social media post that starts a riot, or even a single algorithmic trade that can wipe out a country's wealth in an instant. You can't see them, but their impact, absolutely devastating. All right, so if there is a war, there has to be an enemy, right? The book argues that it's not a country you can point to on a map. Instead, it puts forward this idea of a deep state. And this is the main antagonist of the whole story. And the way the novel defines this term, it's really interesting. It's not some shadowy government cabal. It's described more like a shadow architecture, a global alliance of powerful groups from the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, you name it. They operate above and beyond any single nation. Their power doesn't come from flags. It comes from controlling money, data, and the flow of information. So what's their endgame, according to the author? It's all about control. The book suggests this group wants to turn independent citizens into just predictable consumers and sovereign countries into nothing more than open markets. Ultimately, the goal is to control the entire global story and keep the world locked in a system where rising nations can never truly break free. So if the enemy is this global network, what are its weapons? Well, the book calls them the tools of fifth-generation warfare, or 5GW. And this is where the lines between war and peace, soldier and civilian, just get completely erased. The story gets really specific, focusing on what it calls a threefold trap that's supposedly designed for a rising power like India. What makes these strategies so dangerous, according to the author, is that they're not obvious attacks. They're designed to make a country basically implode from the inside out, to tear itself apart without a single shot ever being fired. First up is the generation trap. The novel argues that social media isn't just for fun. It's a tool used to tap into the natural idealism of young people and whip it up into what it calls a state of permanent hysteria. By pumping up grievances and controlling the narrative online, the claim is you can turn a generation's passion into a weapon for creating chaos. Second is the NGO trap. This one's pretty clever. The narrative suggests that the language of human rights and protecting the environment can actually be weaponized. The idea is that by funding protests against things like new ports or power plants, you can grind a nation's economic progress to a halt, all under the very noble-sounding banner of activism. And the final part of this trap is the economic hitman. This is a direct financial assault. The book describes things like coordinated stock market crashes or currency attacks designed to just shatter a nation's economy. The goal is to create a crisis so bad that the country has to beg for a bailout, which, of course, just reinforces the whole cycle of dependence. Now, the book doesn't just lay out all these threats and leave you hanging. It also proposes a solution, a way to fight back in this new kind of war. And it calls this counter-strategy the Chanakya defense. To understand the defense, the novel says you first have to understand the history of the offense. It lays out these key moments like Bretton Woods making the US dollar the world's currency, or the petrodollar system tying oil to the dollar, as steps in building this system of control. In this telling, India's 1991 crisis was the ultimate low point. But now, something like UPI, the digital payment system, is framed as a digital counterstrike, a way to finally bypass those old gatekeepers and achieve real economic freedom. This whole strategy is personified in the novel's hero, a character named Ajit. He's not some action hero. The author calls him a kshatriya of the intellect, basically a warrior of the mind. He's meant to be a blend of ancient strategic genius, like Chanakya, combined with a total mastery of modern tech like AI and cyber warfare. And all of this brings us to what's really at stake in this invisible war. According to the novel, it's not just about land or money.
At its very heart, the conflict is framed as something way deeper, a fundamental clash between two completely different models for how civilization should work. On one side, the book describes what it calls the Western materialist model. This worldview, it argues, sees the world as just a pile of resources to be mined, and sees people as just data points to be managed for profit. On the other side, it presents an integral Indian model, one that's all about finding a balance between wealth and morality, and aims to lead the world not through force, but by example, by becoming a Vishwaguru, a teacher to the world.
And this is where the story leaves us. It pulls the camera back from these grand, global strategies and points it right at you, the reader. It ends with this incredibly personal and provocative question. In an age of algorithms and invisible influence, the book seems to suggest that the very first act of defense is just to be aware. It's definitely a question we're thinking about.